How many of you here have ever heard of the Sabbath or heard any teachings on it? Any? Okay. How many of you practice the Sabbath? Anyone? Okay. And that's all right. Don't be like, yep, I know what the Sabbath is. Do you practice it? Oh, crud. Don't feel bad, because that is the highest percentage of, especially American culture. We may know about it because we've heard a preacher preach it, or we've read our Bibles and we've come across it, or we may have had some friends who were Jewish, or we grew up with some kind of a culture there that they experience that, but we've never really practiced what it means to have a Sabbath. And that's what I want to propose to you today, that we learn about what it means to have a Sabbath. Ultimately, we have to understand Jesus. I'm just going to read this to you. This is in Matthew? No, it's in Mark somewhere. I lost my page. But it's in the book of Mark, and it says, the Sabbath was created for man. Man was not created for the Sabbath. Jesus had to talk to some people about the Sabbath and what that meant. And they were questioning him, and he said, Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath, meaning this. We are to honor the Lord on the Sabbath, but the Sabbath is not just another religious holiday or hoop that God wants us to jump through so that we can impress him, so that he can show us some more love, so that we can feel good about ourselves. God does not want you to jump through hoops. He loves you exactly the way that you are. But yet he says in the scripture time and time again, honor the Sabbath and keep it holy. And keep it holy. So, I do not come to you today as a person who is an expert in Jewish culture and customs, okay? All right, so if I get something a little bit wrong, I'm okay with that. I just want you to be okay with that. I'm a learner. I hope you're a learner. I don't come to you saying that I have got the greatest experience in what it means to Sabbath, but I'm learning it. And we've been practicing Sabbath in our home over the last number of months and what that means. And I want us to go on a journey, and I want us to learn what it means to understand what Sabbath is all about. So in order to do that, not only do I want us to understand what Sabbath is all about, I want us to understand how we can take the principles of that Sabbath that God speaks and apply them to our lives today. Why? Why are we doing this? Why don't we get onto some real spiritual stuff? This is. God says, honor the Sabbath and keep it holy. He says, whoever honors the Sabbath, he blesses. Those that oppose the Sabbath, have you ever read your Bible? In the Old Testament, he kills them. No, he doesn't kill them. They die. They die. He says, anybody that doesn't honor the Sabbath, let them be put to death. Meaning, this is so serious that we have to understand the teaching and the principle of this. So what is it that God's trying to get across to us? So I want to try to paint a picture, if you will. I want us to learn a little bit about the Jewish customs and culture, how they honor the Sabbath, why they honor the Sabbath. What is it? Because I went researching. I've been reading a bunch of books about Sabbath, talking to a bunch of people, and everywhere you go, I've noticed they can look at Sabbath or define it just a little bit differently, depending on who you talk to. And at the core of it, though they may do it maybe they're a little bit more legalistic, and they're just on it. You know, you can't light a fire on Sabbath because that's work. There is actually a group of people who, I don't know who they are, when this was, but you could not go to the bathroom on the Sabbath. Now, the Sabbath is about resting. I don't know about you. If I don't go to the bathroom in a 24-hour period, I am not resting. I am not comfortable. So, this is just something I read in my reading. There was actually a group that so far legalistic, you don't work. But then there's the other side of the ditch. You don't want to miscontextualize the whole thing and say, well, Sabbath is about honoring God, so I think we do that pretty good just by showing up to church, don't you? You see, then we miss the whole mark of what God is trying to teach us. Is it good to show up to church? Absolutely. That's where we become better together. We grow in our walk with Christ. And we're going to find out what the Lord has to say about that. So, the Jewish culture and the Jewish customs, we're going to take a look at that. And then I'm going to jump over, because y'all want to know, okay, that was great, but what does the Word of God have to say about it? And what does that apply to us? So I want us to take small bites. Are you okay with that? Just small bites. We're not going to learn about Sabbath, and I'm not just going to dump all this information on you and then say, God bless, see you next week, good luck. We're going to take small bites. And here's what I'm going to do. right from the very beginning, I want to invite you to go on a journey. Are you ready for a challenge? Are you okay with this? Here's a challenge that I'm going to give to you as a church. I'm going to invite you to go on a journey with us as a staff in Sabbathing, a 24-hour period, one day a week, that you will Sabbath. So, I'm going to let that sink in a moment because you're like, okay, what does that mean? You're asking me to commit, but you've not taught me anything yet. I know, and I've done that intentionally because if you wait to understand everything and perfect it before you'll step out in obedience to Sabbath, you'll never step out. So I'm asking you to just step out and join me. Now, there's some of you here today that are like, you know what? I'm all in. I'll do this. I'm committing. Whatever you need, I'm with you on this, Pastor. And there's some of you that are saying, I want to do this, but I want to hear a little bit more information first before I fully commit. I get that. I'm just encouraging you to do this because we live in a world that's chaotic, folks. Have you noticed that? We are working ourselves literally to death, trying to figure out how we can get more hours in our week. I'm going to tell you how. Sabbath. I'll explain this. There's some of you here today that are saying, hey, I love you, Pastor, I love Jesus, but I'm not going to do this. That's okay. There's still a lot that you're going to learn. But I'll tell you this. Those that honor the Sabbath, God says that He blesses. Well, I thought God blessed me even while I wasn't Sabbathing. He does. God always pours forth a blessing into your life. He loves you with an everlasting love, even if you have not come to the knowledge of a relationship with Him. But He's calling us as sons and daughters to walk in relationship with Him. And then it says that when we say yes to Him, He pours forth blessings into our life. And then He says, and if you honor the Sabbath, He pours forth more blessings, as we'll see in a moment. So I'm going to invite you to join me on this journey. I'm going to ask you to Sabbath with me for a 24-hour period from Saturday to Sunday. Okay? And the reason I'm asking for Saturday to Sunday is because Jewish culture would go from, they would do it at a different time. They would go from Friday to Saturday. We're here, did I say that right? Yes, Friday to Saturday. We're here on Sunday is when we celebrate. It's the Christian, holiday, church. We celebrate the risen Lord. And so I'm asking you from Saturday to Sunday because Sabbathing does not mean that you get, some of us, when we hear Sabbath, we think, I'm all in, man, another Christian holiday. I get another Christian day off. That's not what Sabbath is all about. Sabbath, don't do any work. That means I don't have to go to church, right? No, you have to go to church. I want to see you here next week. And when you come here next week, I want you to bring somebody with you because this is going to be very imperative for them to learn, as well as you and I, for the overall well-being of our life, our spiritual and our physical life, our health. If you will commit to doing this, then what I want you to do at the end of service is there's a couple clipboards up here that you'll notice. You come up, put your email on it, your email address, okay? And what will happen is when you sign up with that email, throughout the next following weeks, you're going to receive some emails that will be teachings on Sabbath, little snippets or insights about Sabbath. It'll be encouragement about you Sabbathing. It'll give you little tips and pointers about learning about Sabbathing. We're going to do this together. I've already told you, I don't know everything, but I do know this. At the beginning of the year, the Lord said, by the end of this year, you guys are going to be talking about your soul, you're going to be talking about Sabbathing, and you're going to be talking about emotional health. I think the Lord has just primed our hearts to receive this because we are in a chaotic, busy, messy world. And so what we're looking for is God to swoop in and teach us something, a new form of technology to navigate through it all. When God already gave it to us years ago and He says, I haven't changed my mind, Sabbath. But what is it? And how do you do it? If you will commit to this, maybe you're here today and you're saying, Pastor, my job will not allow me to do Saturday to Sunday. Well then, for those rare occasions, I want you to pick a 24-hour period of time when you can do it. But the reason I'm encouraging Saturday to Sunday is because we already have Sunday built into the United States to worship the Lord. And Sabbathing does not mean doing nothing. Sabbath means resting, as we'll learn in a moment. And it means finding God in the midst of all that we do, worshiping Him, honoring Him. It doesn't mean you have to sing songs all day long. It doesn't mean you have to light a candle and stare at it all day long. It doesn't mean you have to be anything weird. You just start noticing what's around you because in our busy world, we're so trying to buy that house. We got to work more hours. Some of us are working 40, 60, 80, 90 hours. Maybe you're here today and you're working 40 hours a week and you say, that's it, I'm just doing 40 and then I come home. But when you come home, you start doing work. and you're working helping out that son or that daughter or that in-law or that nephew or that coworker or that friend, or you got a part-time job. And I'm not saying don't volunteer, and I'm not saying don't help. I'm saying I think you work more hours than you really give yourself credit for most of us. And we don't realize how much we're not resting and stopping and honoring the Lord. And so that's why we're here at this point. If you cannot do Saturday to Sunday, then pick another 24-hour period, but sign your name, and if you will do that, then if you're willing to commit to it, I want you to take one of these candles with you, okay? One per family. And I want you to take it with. And here's how the Jewish custom works and what they would do. I'm going to ask Lisa if you'd come and light the candle. And Jewish culture, Jewish custom would teach simply this, that when it was time to Sabbath, the way that the Jewish traditions would do it, I'm sorry, I'm giggling because all the short people in the church are looking at you giggling. Tippy toe. In the homes, this is what they would do. They would prepare for the Sabbath, first of all. You don't just Sabbath and say, 5 o'clock, let's do nothing. They would be running around, making plans, getting ready for the Sabbath, but what initiated or signaled that the Sabbath has started is when in the home, the woman of the home would come and light the candle in their house. Now, I'm going to explain a little bit more about what this candle means and some of their customs to the best of my knowledge, to the best of my abilities. When I'm giving you a candle, the reason I'm giving it to you is, number one, this was Jewish customs that would teach you to do a couple things that we'll talk about in a moment. But really what it is it's a physical reminder of a spiritual principle that we're attempting to learn in our lives right now. This is what it's all about. So, the Sabbath, let me just talk about a little bit of the background. The Sabbath in Hebrew is called Shabbat. So I might say Shabbat sometime. I'll probably say Sabbath. They're both the same thing. But the Sabbath was one of the best known but least understood of all Jewish observances. People who don't observe the Sabbath usually think this, I can't Sabbath, I don't want to do that. It's going to be boring. It's going to be painstaking. There's going to be so many restrictions and things that I can't do. They're going to say, you can't do this, you can't do that, can't do this, can't do that. And that doesn't sound like fun to me, so I don't want a Sabbath. But to those who observe the Sabbath, they realize what a great gift this is that God has given. It's a great day of joy. And many people who practice it, and you're not going to do this perfectly, but don't worry about it. You'll make mistakes. But when you learn to start practicing that, you'll start to look forward to it. You'll actually look forward to this day. We've been practicing it in our home for a few months now. And, the first couple months, I just kind of had to get used to it. Yeah, the Sabbath. That means I can sit around and do nothing, right? And then I had to get into this rhythm. And I had to learn what it meant to Sabbath. And then as I've gone along, there's some things that I started to learn, things the Lord started to reveal to me, and they were around me all the time. All of a sudden, the grass became greener. All of a sudden, the birds became a little bit more unique. The things that were around me, the beauty of God's creation, all of a sudden took on another dimension because there was a willingness to stop and say, I'm setting aside everything else so that I can focus on honoring you, Lord. We've got a lot of things to do. And we're always thinking, I got to move this to the side, that to the side, this to the side, that to the side. Do you know that's what Sabbath is all about? Just setting things aside to honor the Lord. Work is always going to be there. It is always going to be there. As a matter of fact, one of the things that I've learned, I'll give you a little insight. I didn't say this first service, but we were going through Sabbath, and I was making notes, jotting things down that I was recognizing about Sabbath. And I'm going to let you in a little secret, at least about me. Sometimes if I'm not going to be at church, there's a little bit of a worry that what if things go wrong and I'm not there? But then there's an even bigger worry that says, what if I'm not there and things go better? I'm just being honest with you, okay? What if Pastor Lisa, Pastor Chris, Pastor Kim, all of them, what if things actually worked better without me? And I don't want to face that, therefore I don't want to be gone. See, my unwillingness to want to rest is directly related and tied to my control over all of it. When you Sabbath, what you're ultimately saying is we're stopping everything to say it's not about us, it's about you. This world will keep on spinning even though I'm not at work today or I'm not, whatever that is, doing this job or this task. what you're doing is prioritizing according to the Word of God. And one of the things I learned through this moment was the Lord showed me, as I went through it, He said, Jim, do you realize that there's nobody else that I've called to pastor this church right now for this season and time except you? And I went, yeah, you did. And He said, so it doesn't matter if you take a time and go rest. When you come back, we'll be here together. Do you know what a great peace that washed over my heart? I didn't have to worry any longer. You know what I got to do? I got to do this. How many of you guys would like to do that in your situations? Just to be able to, I can just rest. I can just rest in the presence of God and enjoy the people that He's placed in my life. See, that's why they honored the Sabbath. It was a time to acknowledge God has called you to whatever season of life you're in. You honor the Sabbath right where you're at, and God continues to pour forth more blessings. You see, you observed God's greatness, so much so that He put this in the Ten Commandments. In the Ten Commandments, it would say, don't, you realize how some of them were simple. Don't kill. Don't steal. Don't lie. Honor mom and dad. But when it came to making idols and honoring the Sabbath, He went on for about 2 or 3 sentences, and we'll get to that in just a moment. Obviously, this is a big deal to God. He wants us to honor the Sabbath, but it's one of the things that it's hard for us in our world to understand. You see, Shabbat or Sabbath is primarily a day of rest, spiritual enrichment. The word Shabbat comes from the root word. It's these words, I'm going to try to pronounce it. Does anybody here know Hebrew? Okay, then don't throw rocks at me. It looks like it says Shin Bet Tav, meaning to cease, to end, to rest. To cease, to end, or to rest. Shabbat's not specifically a day of prayer, although prayer is included in that. Because some people think, man, if I do a Sabbath, that means I got to pray more. I mean, well, in the Jewish culture, that wasn't a big deal to them. You want to know why? Do you know how many days Jewish people prayed? Every day. Do you know how many times a day they prayed? At least 3 times. So to say, oh, we got a Sabbath, that means we got to pray more. That was no skin off their nose. You know why? They were already praying. They already had that relationship. But to say that would be a difficult thing, it would be like saying, oh man, we got to eat another meal. You know, how many of you here like to eat? If you're not raising your hand, liar, liar, pants on fire. We all like to eat. And as a matter of fact, when we go away and take time to Sabbath, my wife tends to like to shop. I don't know if you knew that about her. But this last time, I guess it didn't dawn on me until this last time, I'm kind of a foodie. I like to go find new places. I like to go just enjoy. There's nothing wrong with that. As a matter of fact, in the Jewish culture, when the Sabbath was getting ready to start, the woman would come in and light the candle, and if it wasn't the mother of the home, it could be, sometimes it was as young as a 3-year-old girl in the home, depending on the home and what they designated who would light that candle. When the candle was lit, Sabbath had started. Work ceases. And we now spend that time honoring the Lord. And the very first thing they do is have a gigantic meal around the table together as a family. Let me ask you this, you don't have to answer it. When's the last time you and your family have sat around a dinner table and ate together? That right there might be an indicator of how little time we've had together and how busy we've been. We've got to sit around the table. I'm not saying that we perfected it. I'm not saying our family always sits around the table, but I say we work at it. Sabbath, what they did, intentionally shut down everything. I want to go to Johnny's and play. Nope, Johnny's going to miss out tonight. Oh, I've got to go do that. No, not tonight you don't. We're going to have a meal together. Now, you as a family got to figure out what that looks like, okay? I'm not saying be so legalistic that, you kind of just try to control things. But food was always involved. They would have a meal to welcome the Sabbath. They would have a meal halfway through. They would have a meal ushering the Sabbath out. They would have a prayer at the beginning asking, I believe it's called the Shabbat Shalom, which was the prayer of peace for the Sabbath that they're moving into. And they would have a prayer as they exited the Sabbath, basically saying, we really hate to see this go, so God bless us until we're back to see you next week. I'm kind of very much summarizing it. There were prayers that were prayed after the candle was lit before the meal. The father would lay his hand upon the son and would pray a blessing of Ephraim and Manasseh upon the boys. And I forgot 2 of them. I should have looked it up. in between services, but he would lay his hand upon the girls, his daughters, and pray a blessing of Rachel, Sarah, Leah, and another girl that I can't remember. and he would pray Rebecca, and he would pray that blessing upon them. And they would then usher in and they would have a meal. And when they lit the candle, there was 2 candles in a Jewish home, and it was for this reason. A lot of the Greeks really got mad at the Jews because all they did was when they saw the Jews honoring the Sabbath, what they saw them as being lazy. They saw them as needing another holiday so they can have a day off in the week. And they were perceived as lazy. The Greeks didn't understand that it was about honoring the Lord. So Sabbath involves 2 interrelated commandments, and that is to remember and to observe. And that's why there was 2 candles in the home. One was to remind us to remember, and one was to remind us to observe. And that's what we're called to do. I challenge you that as you commit to this, if you do so, and as you take a candle, and when you start your Sabbath, light this candle. Feel free to say a prayer. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. We just ask the Lord's blessing on the Sabbath. Teach us, lead us. And we'll light the candle. And then now if you leave the house, please feel free to blow it out. And it's a physical reminder of a spiritual principle that's taking place in your life. And you're to remember and observe the Sabbath. That's why the Jews light the candles, the Jewish customs and the Jewish cultures. Now, a typical Jewish weekend. I've been reading books. I contacted, we had a guy here by the name of A.J. Swoboda who taught a symposium that I think some of you went to. And while he was here, he was speaking on Sabbath, a Jewish man. He's been teaching about Sabbath to the leaders of Foursquare. And I emailed him and I said, can you help me? Because everywhere I Google, everyone's doing Sabbath just a little bit differently. But they did have common denominators, and that was to honor the Lord. And he said, yeah. He says, it's funny that you email me. He said, I'm writing a book right now based upon that. And we're going to be giving you some information in the next few weeks that help with Sabbath, a book called 24/6. That's for another week, though. And AJ said, here's one of the things that you got to understand. He said, Jerusalem was crazy on Fridays. He says, because they're working, work. But on Friday, about 2 to 3 p.m., he said, Jerusalem goes nuts because everyone is rushing to get everything done because Sabbath is about to start. Sabbath starts on a Friday night at sundown. Now, these people are just going crazy. So about 2 to 3 p.m., what happens is you'll find people running around, the people that are observing the Sabbath, and they would treat the Sabbath as if it were a house guest. Let's say that you have a guest coming to your house, one that you like, by the way, a house guest that you like. What are you going to do? You're going to clean the house. You're going to get the beds made, do the laundry, the dishes, all that stuff that you don't want to do while they're here. You're going to get that work done, all right? And if you don't get it done when Sabbath hits, you're done. You just make that up in your mind. I'm done. Sometimes it's hard because when we Sabbath, if dishes pile too high, it drives her a little bit nuts. It doesn't really bother me a bit. But kind of ironically, in a funny way, I think I've shared with you, I'm kind of one of those weird people. I like to do laundry, okay? Don't ask me why. I don't know. Jesus just made me that way. So there's something fulfilling about taking something dirty and making it clean that brings joy to my heart. That's all I can say. So I enjoy doing that. But on a Sabbath, I lay that aside because though it's something that I don't mind doing, it's a task that doesn't need to be done right now. What needs to be done is to honor the Lord. And so everyone's working hard to get their stuff done. When a guest comes, you want to spend time with them. You want to enjoy a meal with them. You want to talk with them, engage with them. You don't want to have to tell them, I got to go clean the dishes. I got to go scoop the cat box. You don't want to tell them that stuff. You want to enjoy every moment. And that's how the Jewish culture treated Sabbath. God said, honor the Sabbath and keep it holy. And so they, at sundown, would honor the Sabbath and get everything prepared and ready to honor the Lord. You know, this was interesting to me. I got to study this out a little further, so this is just a side note. Do you know that when Jesus died on the cross, they took his body down? Again, we're going to visit this in a little while. I need to study this out a little more. But they took his body down, and they were getting ready to prepare his body. And if you read, don't quote me on this verbatim, but it says that they stopped preparing Jesus' dead body to go prepare for the Sabbath. They experienced the Sabbath, and then they came back to the work of finishing bearing Jesus. That seemed very powerful to me. Because even Jesus, the fleshly body that he, even in its form of death, is teaching us that there is nothing more important. Even the death, burial, and resurrection, I mean, that's the most important. But he says, even the preparation of taking care of his body, honoring the Sabbath, is more important than that. We must take a time and we must pause. Are we doing okay so far? Okay. Sabbath is like that guest. We welcome it. We're ready for it. We want that guest to come. You get excited, man, I can't wait till they get here. We're going to hang out. We're going to have a fire. We're going to have a meal. And we're going to go for a walk. We're just going to celebrate and hang out together and catch up on old times. See, that's exactly why we Sabbath, so that we can take time to say no to the busyness of the world and to say yes to welcoming the presence of God. And you as a family celebrate God. Now, maybe you're here today and you're single and you're going to Sabbath. God bless you. God will show you what that means and what your priorities should be. He's going to show you what is work and what is not work. He's going to show you what is fun and what is not necessarily, it's just busyness. And he's going to show you how you need to honor that Sabbath. If you're here today and you're married and you have a family, God bless you as well. But you're going to discover a new truth. Sabbath to you may not look exactly like Sabbath does to your other. And that's going to require you to communicate and talk and figure out. Here's going to be a word that you're going to have to learn. Compromise. You see, we've been practicing Sabbath in our home for, myself, about 6 months, I think. And Lisa's been doing it a little bit longer. And we started learning this and doing it together. Now, Sabbath for me looks like one thing. Sabbath for Lisa looks like IKEA. You know, and we kind of laugh and joke and back and forth, but what's fun for her may not be fun for me. And so she may enjoy shopping. And I like to give her a hard time in that. She'd be like, hey, do you want to go shopping? I'd be like, hey, do you want to eat broken glass? You know, no, I don't want to go shopping. I'm more of the person that says, give me the list. I've got a tactical plan for accomplishing this goal. How many things are on your list? 3. Okay. Seth, you go that way. Dre, you go that way. I'll go up the middle. We'll meet back in 5. Done. And she looks at me like, you just totally just don't get it, do you? And at that point, in my younger years, I did not. Now that I've aged a little bit more, I still don't like to shop that much. But I really like my wife. I'm in love with her. And I want to spend time with her. So if she wants to go to IKEA, I want to go where she goes for a short period of time. I had to clarify that so she doesn't use this message against me. You said. However, my definition of Sabbath can look a little different. I like movies. I like to watch movies. I like to go to the movies. I like to watch some TV programs. So it's not that she doesn't like it. She just doesn't want to do it all day long. So we have to compromise. So we'll go to a movie, or we'll watch a TV program, or we'll go to IKEA, or we'll go to this new store that we discovered at home. By the way, anyway, I'm going to create a new navigational app for phones that diverts around any IKEAs. But you know what? We have the funnest time. Why? Because we've intentionally stopped the craziness and busyness of life and have spent time honoring God and enjoying one another. You're going to, as a couple, have to figure out what that means. What is work to you? What is not work? Because since I enjoy doing laundry, and I don't mind doing that, even though that might not feel like work to me, she may be over there looking at me going, this is frustrating me a little because that's work. If she sees it as work. So if she does, then I need to be willing to lay that down. She may enjoy doing gardening or flowers and that, but that's not relaxing to me. That's some work. I got to go out there and dig holes and say, where do you want the next one? And so she's very gracious. And she's like, okay, we'll do that a little bit, but we don't do it all day long. We'll go to different places. We've discovered we enjoy walks. And as we go on walks, there's just a new, fresh look because we're intentionally Sabbathing. We've learned to take the tennis racket, or we're going to get ready to do that one. Take the tennis racket out, just hit the ball around. We find things where we want to go, things that we want to do. Here's my point. If you want to Sabbath properly, it's going to require some work, and you're going to have to plan it. Anything of good quality is going to cost you. There's going to be work involved. You're going to have to work. But when you do it and you plan ahead, God pours forth quite a blessing. Now, the family, to back up a little bit, because I kind of got ahead of myself, the family, after they've lit the candle, they've had the meal, they would go attend a brief service. By the way, a brief Jewish service, you want to guess how long that is? 45 minutes. So I want you to know you've been experiencing a brief message every week. So, by Jewish standards. But an average service could go anywhere to around 3 hours. And they would spend that time to worship and to honor the Lord. So one of the things I found very interesting was Jewish rabbis have a phrase, melech, I don't know if I said it right, moshev. I may have totally mutilated that word right there. But I was taught in the very one class I had on Hebrew that if you're going to try to speak Hebrew, always sound like you're clearing your throat. They got such a strong dialect on that. What that phrase meant for them, and anybody that's watching this later on TV that heard me just say that that's Jewish, I apologize. When Adam and Eve were placed in the garden, what it means is this. It means your work is done unto the realization of God's plans and vision. When they celebrated Sabbath, it means we are done with our work up to this point to whatever it is that God has for us, because wherever He wants to go, that work will be waiting for us, and if it's not waiting for us or we don't make it till that time, then God had a whole other plan. The point is we're resting in the assurance that God, this is all about Him. This is all about Him. See, when Adam and Eve were placed in the garden, they were placed with a purpose. They had work to do. They had to cultivate and nurture the created space that God had given them. So their task was to bring about God's desires through their vocation, through their working, through their job. So ultimately what God is saying is you must work. It's good to work. I'm not saying when we go through this series, Sabbath means quit working so hard and don't work at all. I'm not saying that. I'm saying we work so hard we never properly rest. And it will show up in your health. It will. But before it gets to your health, if you can learn to Sabbath correctly, you can address it in your spirit, in your home, in your heart, then your health is a byproduct of what you choose to do or not to do. So Adam and Eve had a job to do. You and I, we have a job to do. And work matters to God. It does matter to God. Although work is holy, our human tendency as a result of sin is to exalt the work as the central part of our human vocation. Do you know what I mean? What we do is though work is important, it's not as important as obeying and honoring the Lord. But what we tend to do is honor the work. Why? Because we get more money. And if we get more money, then we can buy more things. And if we get more things, then we can buy more things, more houses, more cars. But the problem is the more that we get, the more we have to pay to insure them. And the more we have to pay them off, or the loan that's on them. And the more we have to pay to fix them and maintain them. And since that's going to require more money, that means we have to do more work. And it's a vicious cycle that gets out of control till all of a sudden we don't know what to do. And we say, God, what's the answer? And He says, I gave it to you, Sabbath. You will find out that you can accomplish more when you honor the Lord than anything you could do in your own strength. There's a true story of, I don't have names and I didn't get a date, but I was reading a lot of books about Sabbath, and one of them said there was settlers in the pioneer days when they were traveling in the wagons and the horses, and they were coming from the west and they were traveling to the east. What happened was this. As they traveled, they loved the Lord. They wanted to honor Him, so they would travel 6 days and they would stop on the seventh. They would Sabbath. Animals weren't going to work. They were going to rest. Kids, play, have fun. We're not traveling. We're not working. And then after the Sabbath was over, they'd pick up and they'd travel 6 more days. They'd stop and honor the Lord. But winter was coming. And so there was a division that rose among the camp. Some said, we need to keep going. We need to just, we love the Lord and we want to honor Him. But wisdom says, let's hurry up and beat the winter season and get to the East Coast. And we can then start honoring the Lord when we get there. Well, there was such an argument about it that there were 2 camps. There was a split. So there was a group that went and traveled all 7 days, just kept traveling. Then there was another group who traveled on the 6 days, and then they Sabbath and honored the Lord. You want to know who made it there first? It was those that honored the Lord. And the reason was, you'd say, that's impossible. How does that happen? simply because they stopped and honored the Lord. They were refreshed in their spirits. They were refreshed in their physical health. And the ones that traveled all 7 days, their animals were dying because they were overexhausted, overworked, overheated. A lot of the children and some of the adults, they paid a price. They died because the travel was so exhausting and excruciating on them. Though they made it, they didn't all make it. But those who honored the Sabbath did. Doesn't that sound kind of like our world today? I know you may be here today and you're saying, Pastor, this is really great and I'm kind of interested in learning this stuff. But if you're really asking me to Sabbath, winter's coming and we got to get from point A to point B. All I would say is honor the Lord. Won't you learn to just try to practice Sabbath in your home? But I don't have time for it. No, you don't have time to not practice Sabbath. You've got to make it a high priority. And you will find out that if you will honor the Lord, you will accomplish more in the 6 days because you're honoring God on the 7th than you will in all 7 days that you're honoring yourself. Well, wisdom says we should, you know what? Wisdom is good and it's given by God, but wisdom never trumps the Word of God. God is the author of wisdom that He gives to us. And God said in the 10 Commandments, honor the Sabbath and keep it holy. Honor it and keep it holy. Let me go back to, I'm going to give you the stuff in the outline, okay? Because I want to keep trucking on this, but think back to a time when you had a snow day. You may have wondered, why did we call this message Snow Day? Do you remember as a kid when the snow would come? And it would literally shut down the community. You remember that? I mean, there's so much snow, and it's not just snow that's fallen, but it's snow that's fallen and is still falling. So you know, I'm not even going to go out and shovel right now. Because if I go out and shovel, have you ever done this? It's so frustrating. It's snowing. I'm going to stay on top of it. So you shovel only to get by the end of your walkway, and that's all covered once again. So you turn around and you work this way. You're just working. You're just busy. But when that snow comes and it falls to such a degree where your schools are closed, your businesses are closed, there's no transportation happening on any road because the snow's so bad. Do you know what actually happens? There's a collective sigh throughout that community that goes, why? Because everything's been shut down and we have been put in a position to just rest because there's nothing else we can do. How good would it be? And what a shame it is that it requires an act of nature or weather to get us to that place of resting and stopping. It takes a blizzard, a snowstorm, to get us to stop and rest and honor the Lord. Do you know what your job is in the middle of a snow day? Nothing. Nothing. You're eventually going to have to work, and if somebody said shoveling, I heard it out there, you don't shovel till you're ready to. Hey, put that off. Snow's not done falling yet. We'll get to that in just a moment. See, that's what you do on Sabbath, is you say, I'm going to honor the Lord. But there's work to do. Yeah, but you can get that a little later. The snow will still be there. The work will still be there. On a snow day, your job is to sit in your pajamas, drink hot chocolate, eat cereal out of a big bowl, and make sure to drink the milk like that so you get the ring of milk right around there. And then go grab a blanket, sit down and turn on some TV, cartoons, whatever you want, and you take a nap, and you rest. Oh man, I wish every day it could be like this. Well, it can't be every day because God said work, but He did say 1 day a week you're to Sabbath. My question to you is, when's the last day you gave yourself that kind of rest? I didn't say day off. Days off. You're like, oh, I already have a day off, Pastor. No, but I would be willing to bet that on your days off you work as hard, if not harder, than you do during your work week. Because you're working. Let's go home, do a few things, eat some supper, kind of have a little time with the family, go to bed, get up, do it all over again. So that on Friday, now I'm going to do all the things that I couldn't get done during the week when I was working. See, on Friday what you do, and I've invited you to Sabbath from Saturday to Sunday so we can incorporate Sunday as part of our worship. And then you're going to have a day off, but you use that day to prepare for the Sabbath. Get your stuff done. Get your stuff together so you can honor the Lord. See, as an adult, when the snow falls, you just go, the whole community shut down. So I feel this sense of, I don't have to perform. There's no expectation. There's no responsibility. There's no weight or heaviness. Doesn't the Bible say, come to me, all who are weak and heavy laden, and I will give you what? Yeah. But unfortunately, we translate that to until there's a blizzard that hits my community, until something tragic happens and I can't move about and I'm told to stay here, that's when we rest. How much better would it be if we proactively worked into our work week? But Pastor, 24 hours? Yeah, 24 hours. I want you to aim at that. But what if we don't hit it? Well, how many hours did you get? Let's start there. And you start working at it. I'm not asking you to compromise. I'm asking you to just start somewhere and start honoring the Lord. Now in Exodus, I want to read Exodus to you, and then I'm just going to give you the points, bang, 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 like that. Exodus, the Bible, Pastor, we've heard you talk about that stuff, but what does the Bible have to say? Exodus chapter 31 says this. The children of Israel have been in slavery. They've been in bondage. They said, we don't like this. We need somebody to save us. And so they're delivered, and they forget about the bondage and the slavery they were in. And God says that he wants them to honor the Sabbath, to remember the bondage they were once in, and honor him now where they're at. It's the same thing with you and me. God says, I want you to honor the Sabbath. Well, why should I? Because you were once lost, and now you are found. Christ took you from one place where you were in bondage and you were a slave, maybe it was to sin or to whatever it was, and he says, I've set you free, and so I want you to honor me, and in so doing, you're honoring me because of the freedom that I have now given to you, and I want you to keep it holy. So they start building the altar of incense, the ark, the anointing oil, the incense. They get the skilled craftsmen together, and in Exodus 31, verse 12, it says this. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, but as for you, speak to the sons of Israel, saying, you shall surely observe my Sabbaths, for this is a sign between me and you throughout the generations. Plural, by the way, generations, that includes us. That you may know that I am the Lord who sanctifies you. Therefore you are to observe the Sabbath, for it is holy to you. Everyone who profanes it shall surely be put to death. For whoever does any work on it, that person shall be cut off from among his people. For 6 days work may be done, but on the seventh day there is a Sabbath of complete rest, holy to the Lord. Whoever does any work on the Sabbath shall surely be put to death. I think that's twice he said that now. So the sons of Israel shall observe the Sabbath to celebrate the Sabbath through their generations as a perpetual covenant. It is a sign between me and the sons of Israel forever, for in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, but on the seventh day he ceased from labor and was refreshed. How many of you guys would like to be refreshed? Just refreshed. Oh, man, that's just sweet. That's what Sabbath is. That's what Sabbath is to be. Well, will it be like that every week? Well, I don't know. Why don't you just start with 1 week and start walking in obedience to the Lord? Because what you're going to find is simply this. There's 3 things that jumped out. The first bullet there, go ahead and throw that one up there, that I noticed in there. It says in the scripture, you shall surely observe. You shall surely observe my Sabbaths. I looked at the word and the meaning of it, and it means to cling to. That word observe, if you in the Greek, context or content, to cling to. He says, you shall surely enough observe my Sabbaths. You shall cling to them. And then he goes on to say, that you may know that I am the Lord who sanctifies you. Write that word down, sanctifies. Sanctify means this, to set apart. You're dedicated to God, pure, innocent, free from impurity. So he says, you shall observe, cling to my Sabbaths, and you will know that I am the Lord who sanctifies you and sets you apart as you cling to me. And anyone who does not honor the Sabbath shall be cut off. Write that word down, cut off. Now, I'm kind of, nosy. Maybe I see something and it piques my interest and I go, there's got to be more to that. I'm just cutting you. You know what it means? Like sometimes in relationships, we'll be like, that's it. I'm cutting you off. No more I love yous. No more, And we kind of use that kind of a language or terminology, and we get this misinterpretation of what it means. But God, when He says, I cut you off, the word karath means to be cut out of covenant with Him. That's a little bit more serious, isn't it? No longer you just cut off like God's like, oh, I'm not going to give you any attention. God's not emotional, moody that way. God says, I'm the Lord your God who has saved you and called you out of bondage and out of sin and out of slavery. You are to honor the Sabbath and keep it holy. Cling to my Sabbaths, cling to my commands, and let me be the one who sets you apart. Because if you do not, you're cut out of covenant with me. You might say, well, Pastor, I thought I was in covenant with him and I've not been honoring the Sabbath. No, you're in covenant with him in relationship. But he says the Sabbath covenant. He says there's a blessing I want to pour forth into your life. And if you will not honor him, then you miss out on the best that God has for you and for me. You see, what we have to remember is this. Here's what Sabbath means. Go ahead and throw that one up there. Sabbath means to cease. Go back one there. And to stop working. Now, for most people, when we put this definition up there, they suck a little air or they shake their head in derision. I can't do that. Again, I would propose to you, you can't afford not to. Sabbath means to cease or to stop working. Now, I'm not declaring you go to your boss and say, boss man, I'm sorry, I'm Sabbathing, so I can't come in, but I still want pay and I still want benefits. That's why you have to be willing to choose your Sabbath. Many of you here I know work swing shifts. You may be like, well, how am I going to Sabbath? I can't do Friday like the Jews. Well, don't then. Do it on a different day. Now, I'm asking you to join me on the journey from Saturday to Sunday. That's what I want us to do as a church. Why? Because Sunday's built into that, and it's part of honoring the Lord. But if you are working a swing shift and have to do, or scheduling, have to do a different time, then do that. If you're married, work that out together. Try to do that together. Because you'll find out that when you start stopping your work, ceasing, and Sabbathing, God brings a refreshing spirit into your life. But that doesn't come until we do something about it. Write this down. Keeping the Sabbath, by the way, is a commandment. Just in case we forgot. This is a commandment that God gives to us. He didn't say, you know what, if you really want to, you could try Sabbathing out and see how that works for you. He said, no, you shall observe this commandment and honor the Lord with the Sabbath. You know, when you get insurance policies, sometimes at work or something, they'll say, hey, we're going to provide you health insurance, and if you want this extra little thing here, you can, this Sabbath is not an extra little rider to add on to the insurance policy of salvation. Honoring the Sabbath is a commandment that God has given. As a matter of fact, if you flip back to Exodus 20, you'll see, Exodus 20? Yeah, Exodus 20. This is the 10 Commandments. It says, I'm the Lord your God, you shall have no other gods before you. The 2 commandments that he goes on and on and on about is making idols and about the Sabbath. He says, don't kill. Don't kill, don't steal, honor your father and your mother, don't bear false witness. But then he goes here in verse 8, remember the Sabbath day. Keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall not do any work. You or your sons or your daughters, your male or your female servants, or your cattle or your sojourner who stays with you. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that's within them, and rested on the 7th day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Whew, that was a long command. I think God's taken this one pretty seriously. The question is are we? Now, I'm not here. If you're not honoring the Sabbath, if you're not practicing it, this is not a series that's designed to say, if you don't start doing this, man, shame, shame. Everybody knows your name, This is saying, Lord, what are you speaking to us as the body of Christ? I believe that we're in trouble. I believe that we're burning the candle at both ends. I believe that we think, I don't mean this as brash as it may sound. I believe that we think the world revolves around us. Sabbath says, no, the world keeps spinning. He's the Lord, not me. And when I Sabbath, I'm stepping back, declaring that God's bigger than anything else that I'm facing and anything else I have to do. And the Lord honors that. He blesses that. I was talking with my dad a couple days ago. We were talking about Sabbath, and he said, Jim, this is going to be interesting. I don't know how this is going to turn out, because... And I don't say in a joking way, but his generation, he was sharing with me, never really did much with Sabbath. So I'm not saying that, well, see, they really screwed it up, so let's show them how, that's not what it's about. It's about the Lord just bringing us to a moment where he's revealing to us, we're burning the candle at both ends. And this is becoming a problem. We need to understand this principle of rest. We need to come into his presence and understand that he commands that from us. A.J. Swoboda, I know I'm a few minutes over, but please just let me kind of tidy this up a moment, shared with us at a convention, international convention. He was talking about Sabbath. If you want a good book to read, A.J. Swoboda, S-W-O-B-O-D-A, Swoboda. He's got many books on it. And he got up in front of all the pastors and said, out of all the 10 commandments, if any of you pastors broke 9 of them, you would be fired. If you broke any 9 of them, you'd be fired. But if you broke the 4th commandment, you would get a raise or a promotion. And the 4th commandment is to honor the Sabbath and keep it holy. See, if you break that one and work harder and achieve more and do more, then we'll encourage you. But you can't break any of the others. And that's not right. You know, at Christmas time, when you come down, I can't believe how quickly Christmas is approaching us. That's because those tormented people or twisted people on Hallmark keep doing Christmas in July to remind me it's coming. But when kids come down, or you remember when you were a kid and you knew that gift was under the tree and, oh man, I wonder what's in there, and that paper was so shiny and it just beckoned unto you. How many of you have ever opened a gift before Christmas and snuck it by? Maybe parents didn't know. Yeah, why? Why'd you do that? Because there was a gift with your name on it and it was screaming, open me, here I am. And you went down and you tore into it and peeked in the corner because you couldn't wait for the day that you got to open the gift. Do you know that God has given to you and me a gift, and it's wrapped in paper that's so attractive with this huge bow, and it's saying, open me, open me. He wants us to experience what it means to have a Sabbath. Is it going to take work? Yes, it will take some work. Am I going to have to plan ahead? Yes, you're going to have to plan ahead. Well, what can I expect in return? You can expect all the promises of God. He will reveal them to you, not just through His Word, but in your life. You'll start to experience health. Did I ask you this already? Do you know what denomination, did I do this yet? Do you know what denomination on average lives the longest or longer? Any guesses? What denomination? Seventh-day Adventist. And you know why? Because they honor the Sabbath. Now, is that completely why? Well, there's no real definite answer. Now, hear me. The people that did the studies on Seventh Day didn't say Seventh-day Adventists have it all figured out. Their way is the way. We all have different understandings, different denominations, but the one thing that they do get right is honoring the Sabbath. And on average, they live 10 years longer than other Christians in other denominations. Could it be that it's directly related to the fact that they honor the Sabbath and we don't? Could it be? See, God's calling us because to honor the Sabbath, sometimes it's not so much just about honoring Him, but it's about finding what we've been looking for. Rest, health, answers, peace, joy. That comes when you honor the Lord. So I'm asking you to join me for this journey, to honor the Lord, to be able to stop, to cease, to rest. You don't have to do it perfect, but you have to do it. And the only reason I say have to is because it's a commandment. Do you know that God loves you so much that He only gives you these commandments because He wants to protect you? Like a parent who would tell a child, don't touch the stove. Do I want to keep my kid back from experiencing the life of what it means to be a cook or a chef? No. It's because the burner's on. And I don't want them to become harmed and live life fearful forever of the stove. God gives us commands. Not because He hates us or He's mad at us, but for many of us, we're burning the candle at both ends. And we don't know what it means to rest. I'm just going to ask you to join me on this journey and let God reveal to you whatever it is that He wants to as we obey Him. Father, I thank You for Your word. I pray today that we just set the stage. We've told the story. I pray that the seeds that have been planted, Lord, that as You're tugging on our heart, that we would respond to You. Lord, we do ask that the peace of Sabbath would be upon our lives as we practice that Sabbath. Lord, I pray that You would bring us to a place of realizing we're not, please hear me, church, we're not that important that we can't obey and honor You. So Lord, I thank You that You love us, that sometimes You'll just say, stop, be still, and know that I am God. So Lord, we honor You, we love You, and we ask this all in Your name.